Hello everybody, and thank you so much for spending some more time with us today to work on your clothing manufacturing business. And today Colleen Jack is going to talk to us about grading patterns.
Thanks, Mel. And so, yes, this is the last in the series, and it is what most often people find challenging. And so I suppose talking about grading sizes today is to put people at ease. So I'm going to screen share with everyone, and let's go on this adventure. So first of all, we create sizes off a master pattern. And that master pattern is sampled, we have done a critique on it, we've checked that the fit is correct, and we're ready to go into production. A good pattern maker grader will then make sure that all of the seams are correct. They'll fold the sleeve in half, make sure that the underarm sleeve measurement is correct. They will track the sleeve head into the armhole. And so they will make sure that every seam goes together accurately, every balance notch is accurate before they start grading. If we didn't have a master pattern, we would then have to engineer every size like we did the master pattern, which is way too expensive. So we use the master pattern. It's normally in the middle. So if we start with a medium, we would then go small, extra small, large, extra large, 2XL. So it's normally in the middle, so it doesn't distort the range. Good grading will maintain all of the design aesthetics without distorting over the sizes. And we will decide the grading on the client's target market. So whether it's age or body structure or lifestyle, and according to that, we will then do the grading. And so there are fixed grading rules, but we will follow the designer's idea about how that body dimension will give a perfect look. We will maintain the look as a pattern maker grader, and then the customers will also themselves have an idea around what size give a better look for them for comfort or feel or whatever their criteria are. Sizing is dependent on the pattern maker and the grader's competence, and of course then the manufacturing that happens with that. And some styles lend themselves to different kind of grading. So with a baggy style, we may get away with a one size fits all. Or if the garment is especially complex, we would then have to decide how to proportion the grade over a very complicated design. Stretch materials obviously give you more forgiveness in your fit. And so where we've only got a 5 centimeter grade, an 8 to 14% elastin in the fabric could then give us a little bit more tolerance and leeway. This is also where on stretch fabrics, I recommend we move into SML, XL, and not a 10, 12, 14, or a 34, 36, 38. Stages of production can also affect the final specifications of a garment. So wrong selection of fabric, shrinkage of fabric, defects in the machinery, errors in marking and cutting out, and inaccurate sewing can also distort the fit. And so I had a boss who used to walk through the cutting factories looking in the overlock tray, what had ever been cut off in the overlocking. And he would go berserk because a little millimeter here and a millimeter there over 4 panels can change the size by half a size.
Now, Colleen, just a question here on the question of shrinkage. Do you recommend that designers pre-wash all fabric before they cut?
No, Mel, on certain fabrics, you really know that it's as stable as anything. But when you start working on viscoses, especially, you know, depending on what color they are, the viscose has at least a 10% shrinkage. And so one must consider that shrinkage in a viscose style. And viscose lends itself to looser fits anyway.
Mm.
So yes, you could pre-wash it. It's very difficult then, because then you're cutting it into pieces, because most people don't have machinery big enough to wash a whole roll at a time. I would rather say that the factory must be very careful in laying up. And a good factory will allow the viscose to relax overnight and only cut the next day, which is very expensive to have something sitting on a cutting table for so long. And then, of course, if you go into denim manufacturing, denim does shrink, and you do not pre-wash the denim. Normally, there are after washes that will be, you know, depending on the styling finish. So is it an enzyme wash, or is it a stone wash, or is it a whatever kind of wash it is? And so a denim pattern maker will make the pattern to shrink for denim. And so we already inculcate the shrink into the pattern, not into the denim.
Okay. Because I remember when I was working with t-shirting, that would normally shrink 10% in the length, but be fairly stable in the width.
Yeah. And so, you know, you can expect things to bounce up. And yeah, your good pattern maker will have increased a little bit in the length.
Okay.
But also know your suppliers. You know, somebody like Golden Glow, you know, the fabric that they're bringing in is stable year in and year out. You can use the same cotton lycra for seasons, and it is pretty stable. Yeah, and so often we have a situation where the consumers get confused with sizes, and they don't necessarily correlate the numbers that we use with the body measurements that we have created a pattern size for. And so they'll trial our fit and say, well, let me take an S, an M, and an L and see which one actually fits me. Some people with very specific body types only shop at certain stores because they know that the block has the body type inculcated into the fit. And so I often hear from people who shop at Woolies and they love the pants, but they happen to be pear shapes. So if you know which stores make your sizes, then you know that that's typically for their target market. I really try to make this simpler, but basically let's just do a technical explanation. The definition of size charts is for infants, juveniles, and adults, there are a set of rules and increments to be used for grading. With kiddies, there are also height factors. So we grade, we normally do a standard grade, but there are no internationally agreed upon dimensions for actual master patterns to be used, because we are specifically making patterns for a target market. And manufacturers make patterns according to body fit using similar grading increments. And so we do normally talk about a 5 centimeter or 2-inch grade. A set of sizes from the smallest to the largest will have fixed in between intervals. And these intersize intervals need not be the same throughout the range. And so what we would find if we were doing a 10 size grade for, say, corporate wear, is I would then start grading the neckline every alternate size so the neckline doesn't distort. Women don't get fatter in their neck. And so where do you proportion the grade to be sympathetic to the styling of that garment? Size progression are the intervals. They may not be the same throughout the size range of the grade, and it's not uncommon that smaller sizes will have smaller intervals and larger sizes will have larger intervals. And so it's always about what you lose on the swings, you'll make up on the roundabout, and know your target market. So we always talk about a model size 34, but in fact, the average size of a woman in South Africa is actually a size 44. And she's about 5'3". So we are the 3rd most obese country in the world. And so our size breakdowns are often geared towards our eating habits and our lifestyle. And so, yeah, know your target market. And the basic requirements for determining a size progression when grading are reliable size charts. And so that is a very important guide for your grader. And so if you are selling online and you're selling off a size chart, ensure that your pattern maker has that size chart to match the grading to your online selling. The grading increments will increase or decrease from the master pattern for smaller or larger sizes. The increments for children's patterns vary at specific points throughout the size range according to age, height, and of course growth spurts. There are very few graders who specialize in kiddies wear. And kiddies wear is not a standard grade. It is far more complicated and far more checking points to go through. Adults remain the same at specific points throughout that size range. And a master pattern is the completed styled pattern with seam allowance, with all of the necessary markings and sewing instructions and special instructions clearly made visible on the pattern. And any pattern that is on the fold must be on the fold and not just place on fold. Factories do not place fabric on the fold, they lay open. So all patterns must be made on the fold. And then grading distortions will occur when there's a fault, however minor in the master pattern. And that might be a result of, you know, careless pattern making, careless cutting, careless marking of the outlines of the pattern onto the grading paper, incorrect squaring off from a master pattern, and you will live and die by your 90 degree on grading. If you are not at 90 degrees, it will distort. And then careless checking of the master pattern to ascertain if everything fits together. As I said, a good pattern maker will check every seam before they actually start grading. So the definitions of our terms: in a woman, the difference between the bust and the hip dimensions are only 5 centimeters. And in men, the difference between the chest and the waist are 15 centimeters. So that's called the drop, as you go down. I'm not going to talk about picking off because many people will never use this technique. I use nesting. And nesting is placing each size pattern from biggest to smallest, one on top of each other. And you line the center front up or the fold up, and you then see it nests down. And you can literally place a finger between each of the grades because it usually is about 12 millimeters. And so when you are a designer picking up your grading from your grader, you can quickly nest a pattern to do a very quick audit on whether or not the grading is accurate. And so always do an audit. Your pattern maker will be very comfortable if they are confident of their work that you can quickly nest a pattern for accuracy. And then of course, each pattern should be, as I said the other day, every size is in red, and the cutting instructions are in black for quick identification. So what is the difference between simple and proportional grading? So adults use simple grading. We basically just increase the girth. Proportional grading is used for kiddies, where we are taking into the girth and the height as a kid grows. There are different methods of grading, and so I have put these PowerPoints on SlideShare if anyone wants them afterwards. But I use a track or shift grading, which means that the master pattern maker is used to mark one size at a time, and you shift the pattern out accordingly, up or down, whether you're growing the pattern or shrinking the pattern, using your grading rules and marking the necessary outlines in order in the sequence that we do it in. All of these grading methods are right. I prefer track or shift grading because of its accuracy. What we have to know is that if you say, take your medium and then grade the large, cut it out, and then take the large to grade the extra large, gosh help you if you have made a mistake on the large. Because that mistake will then track through to your extra large or 2 extra extra large or 3 extra large.
Mm.
And so I do recommend a shift grading, and there is a way for it to be done accurately, and that we cover in our masterclass. When we check the grade, straight lines that are on the diagonal will not meet. And so diagonal lines distort very quickly. And so every straight line must be then taken with a ruler and straightened off again. Because a curved line is a diagonal, diagonals will distort. And so every armhole, every neckline, every sleeve curve, every sleeve head must be redrawn by hand. And there are rules on how to track that those lines don't distort. And then joining points, angles, and curves, when they become distorted, they then have to be redrawn to be blended into, so that they will match the shape and line of your master pattern. General prep for grading is always arrange the pattern lengthwise, so that you're using the edge of the table with the fold of the pattern, so that it's easy to control. It also means that it's easy to control growing it and shrinking it in front of you. We basically always live and die off a 90-degree angle. And so you will always grade off a square, and those become known as your control lines. So you will always go back home to your control lines when you're grading. And since the size will affect every pattern piece, if there are panel cuts in a design, is to decide where to put the grading proportionately across those panels, so that that style evenly grows across the girth. Yeah, so to grade up one size, the grading amounts are standard. To grade up 2 sizes, you simply double the amounts. And to grade down one size, you use the same amount, but you're just using it in the opposite direction. And if you're grading down 2 sizes, you're grading double the amount. Is that clear?
Yes,
I'm really trying to simplify it. Okay.
Yeah.
And
I think that grading is a complicated enough thing that if anybody really wants to understand it, then they really need to sign up for the master classes
and watch it. And so I can say people do get afraid of grading. I think grading is the most meditative process because the rules are so clear. And so it's an incredibly peaceful process when you're doing it, and an incredibly fulfilling process when it comes out right. So every facet of the master pattern, good, bad, or indifferent, will be repeated across the graded size. And if there are minor discrepancies, they will become major distortions over a larger size. And so you will be able to see if you've made a mistake in grading immediately. And if the lines don't track, stop, don't cut. There is a problem, you have made a mistake. Style features don't grade. Yeah, go for it.
Would you recommend that a designer, say they pick up their graded patterns from the pattern maker, then sample one in each size before they go into production?
It depends on the market. For corporate wear, you would absolutely need a sizing range. And that's because people don't know how to use a tape measure accurately. And so if you are doing a corporate environment with thousands of units, I would make sure that you have a fitting range from that has got every size, and you have a consultant on hand. And that will ensure that every person who tries on a garment comes out of the fitting room and shows the consultant, so that we know that she hasn't put a garment on that's 2 sizes too small, so she can, express her style. We are more concerned that the garment fits to the branding and that it is not to the client's personality. So you may want to wear your private clothes 2 sizes too small, but for our corporate brand, this is the size and this is the garment and this is how it fits. So yeah, so I do recommend a size range for corporate wear. But a lot of our clients are now selling online, and so make sure that your size charts are accurate and that they are garment measurements and not body measurements. or you specify the difference between your garment ease and your body measurement. Something that's very important in grading that will help simplify where we are putting the grading increments is that we don't grade style features. And so that's things like pocket flaps and details like, it doesn't matter if I'm grading a pair of shorts, hot pants, capri pants, long trouser length. The grading rule stays the same for where the grade increases from the crotch height and the girth width. It doesn't matter if I'm grading the sleeve, if it's a cap sleeve, a short sleeve, a 3/4 sleeve, a long sleeve. The grading is happening across the bicep width and the height of the crown of the sleeve. It doesn't matter if I am grading a mini skirt, a pencil skirt, a maxi skirt. The grading happens across the girth of the waist and the hips. So it's very important that we define, are we grading a style feature or are we grading for fit? As I said, design panels are graded with the increments divided evenly between the panels. And the widths of the slacks and the bottoms of the sleeve cuffs must be scrutinized in a grade range. And so if you are going 10 sizes, make sure that by the time you have got to your size 54, that her pants legs aren't so wide. And there we would use what we call pivot grading. And so we are swinging in half the amount at the cuff, the full amount at the waist. Half the amount at the cuff of the sleeve, the full amount at the bicep of the sleeve width. And then always, if you're doing collars, you have got your grade rules to follow, but please make sure that the pattern maker has tracked the neck along the collar to make sure that that collar still fits. And I want to see those lines on a pattern. I can tell when somebody's checked their collars if they fit. Useful aids for grading is a large set square for placing the guidelines. And as I said to you, know how to work a Perspex ruler. Those measurements are there specifically in increments. They will sometimes also have a parallel ruler on the side of that set square, so you don't have to have a separate ruler, but there is a specific parallel ruler for grading. Have a metric tape measure for marking off the grading increments. And this is where, I know in South Africa we use centimeters, but I found grading in inches far more accurate because 1/8 of an inch is easier to check than 3 millimeters. And I could make a mistake with 3 millimeters, but I'm very clear that my 1/8 is very clear. Long steel ruler for drawing straight SRGs for your straight of grains. A clutch pencil, as I said, with a very fine hard lead. And that means you don't have to rub out your pencil lead afterwards so that your pattern looks immaculate. Obviously a good sharp pair of scissors, and there are people who specialize in sharpening scissors. I don't use stacking pins anymore to check my nests, but you can use a stacking pin. So you basically line all the center fronts up together. You push in the stacking pin, and that means that when you check your nests, everything will not shift as you're moving. I like 150 grams by 150 centimeter pattern board. You can get harder pattern board, but I found with my strength in my hand and my scissors that I quite like that weight of the board. 50 centimeter strings. Yes, I'm that anal that all my strings measure the same. When I fold it in half, all my patterns will hang on a wire coat hanger at a level that is below the sleeve on the coat hanger that identifies the pattern and the grade and the style number. And so that's why you need a wire coat hanger for grading, because you're going to hang everything on a hanger very neatly. So let's talk about the increments. It's 5 centimeters or 2 inches in circumference for grading adults. And we drop the length in the armhole and the crutches 6 millimeters or 1/4 of an inch. We always grade off 90 degrees. We always grade in parallel unless we do a pivot grade that will ensure that the cuffs and the hems are not too wide. We centralize all styling features, and we don't grade styling. So we do not grade the length of the pants or the pocket flaps and things like that. Know that diagonal lines distort, so I want to see all of those lines ruled up with a straight ruler. And so with a 5 centimeter grade in circumference, we divide the body into 4 quarters. And so that is a left front, left back, right back. And so that means 1/4 of the body, therefore, grows 12 millis or 1 inch, half an inch. And this is further divided into 4 portions, which is 3 mils or 1/8 of an inch. So it's really, really clear and simple. And so this is what it looks like when you've divided up that 12 millis. We give 1/8 to the neck, 1/8 to the shoulder, and 1/4 out and 1/4 down for the armhole to grow. So whatever I've done to the armhole, I'll do to the sleeve. And so we will grow 1/4 in the head, and we will grow out 1/4. So that will make it half an inch. The hip on the skirt, oh, that's a mistake. That's not 1/4. That is, oh, sorry. That is actually 1/2. So I will divide the dart in the middle and give 1/4 and 1/4. Divide the dart in the middle on the pants, give 1/4, 1/4, and the crutch length will grow 1/4, and we will put 1/4 and 1/4 to either side of the straight of grain. And you can see that I'm on a 90-degree on all of these straight of grains.
That's very clear,
yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, and so a bodice will grade out 1/8 to the neck, 1/8 to the shoulder, 1/4 down and out, and then you track off the rest of the underarm and the bottom hem of the garment. You then put on a 1 centimeter in and 1 centimeter down a pinpoint, and you swivel the sleeve until it tracks 90 degrees to the shoulder line. And you simply trace it off on that armhole. So it's very simple. It's scary for a lot of people, but once you've watched how grading is done, it is, as I say, a very meditative, anticipated process with rules. And if you do not follow the rules, the grading will distort. The minute you see your grading distort, go back, rub out all your lines and restart. You've clearly made a mistake somewhere. Yeah, so if you've done an 1/8 on the neckline, for your collar, you will pull out an 1/8 and trace off your shoulder line, pull out a further 1/8 and trace off the center front and the rest of the collar. Your collar top, you will then pull out 1/4 in total. And with the 2-piece sleeve, you just divide it up. And so you are still giving 1/4 into the height, but then you are giving 1/2 and 1/2 on either side, an 1/8 and an 1/8 on either side. And the very important line to afterwards check is that this outside arm measurement, this top sleeve measurement, measures exactly the same when you've refined the lines. And this is an example of pivot grading, is where you do not want the cuffs and widths of the sleeves to distort, is you will be angling it in from the bottom of the hem to the waist, 1/4 and 1/4, and then at the bottom only moving out 1/2 of that, which would be 1/8. And you can find that those lines start curving at the bottom, and then it would be to work out how to ensure that that line doesn't look dropped once the pants are made and finished. And that's it. That's the end of our grading conversation.
That was very, very useful. Thank you so much, Colleen. You always share such valuable information with our community. I appreciate it so much.
You're very welcome, Mel. Yeah, I think the best and most loving way to learn how to grade is to watch a grader do it first. And once you've done that, practice, practice, practice. And you can go rusty on the rules. And so, you know, always go back to your rules if you haven't graded for a while.
I think your advice to watch somebody doing it first is very valuable. not to just to try and launch in on your own without having a feeling for how it works.
Yeah, it will instill confidence, and you'll see how simple it is and how graceful it is when it's done for you in the beginning. But even if you're never going to grade, know that you can nest a pattern and immediately check whether the grading is accurate. And you'll see everything lines up. It really is the most extraordinary thing to see a nested pattern that's neat and ordered. And you'll feel it in your guts if it's right.
That's great
Cool.
information. Thank you so much for that, Colleen. And for people who are watching who are interested in Colleen's masterclasses, you can contact her at colleen@patternworks.co.za. That's COLLEEN at PATTERWORKS.co.za. I can really recommend that you sign up for her masterclasses if you want to get your pattern grading right.
Darling, thank you as always for your generosity and for the plug. So kind of you. Thank you.
I know you're not going to do it. So. Somebody has to. You're such a brilliant resource. More people should make use of the resource.
And that these videos that we've created together, Mel, will stand in perpetuity. They can be you go back to look at them, go onto SlideShare, have a look at what's on the slides. There's more than enough to handhold people lovingly into their success.
Thank you so much for growing the local clothing industry. I appreciate it so much. And in fact, not even the local clothing industry, internationally, these videos have already gone all around the world. So well done.
Thank you, darling.